Hi guys. So I am doing a video and it's called My Favorite Books That I Own. I'm going to section them up into ones that I've read and ones that I haven't necessarily read, but they're more like inspiration books. P.S. I got this cute little cup because I constantly have to reheat my coffee because all my other coffee mugs are like ginormous, but it seems like it doesn't matter how small my coffee cup is, I will let it sit until it gets cold and have to reheat it. Anyways, so let's get started. First up, the Harry Potter series. I have all 7, but I only brought one book in here with me. The entire series is absolutely one of my favorite reads. I've read this multiple times throughout all ages since I was like 10. And it still is very interesting to me, and I feel like it appeals to all ages. So this series is by far one of my favorites that I own. I recently went back and purchased the hardback ones. I got them used, so some of them are kind of worn. But I would like to go, I saw on Amazon there's a collection where it's like kind of winter themed, and I don't know if you guys know this, but I'm obsessed with everything winter. And it's like over $100, but I think I'm eventually gonna buy it because why not? All of my favorite books, I have at least 2 different versions of it, almost only for the cover. My next favorite that I own is The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexandre Dumas. I might be saying his name wrong, so correct me if I'm wrong. This is one of my all-time favorite books that I've read. I am a huge fan of the classics, but even the classics, some of them can be kind of hard to get into. This one, though, I thought was really interesting, and it is very, very long, but I plowed through this book in like a week or less when I read it. It's almost 1,300 pages long, so that's pretty crazy. And this is definitely my favorite version that I have because of the cover. This is part of the Barnes & Noble, I guess, I don't know what they call it, the hardback collection, but I really like all of these in the series, so eventually I'm going to get all of them. The next up is another one from the Barnes & Noble collection, is Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. Jane Austen, I do like a lot of her books, but something about Pride and Prejudice is, it's just different, and it's definitely my favorite book that she's written. Like, the other ones, I don't even think they can compare. And it's probably my second favorite classic next to The Count of Monte Cristo. I've read this one I don't know how many times, not to mention the movie, specifically the 2007 version with Keira Knightley in it. I don't know how many times I've seen that movie, but I can probably quote it for you, every single word. In fact, I might watch it after I film this, because now that it's in my head, I want to see it again. This one's not terribly long. It's less than 500 pages, and I think it's a pretty easy read. She was way ahead of her time, or maybe she wasn't. Maybe this was like a common female thing back in the day too, and it just wasn't, recorded that often. But the female character, she's a strong female lead, and she's like independent. She doesn't want to get married. She's really into reading and the arts and blah blah blah. But man, I love it. You should read it. Just read it. The next one that I have is called Birth, and this one is by Tina Cassidy. This is a book that a friend lent to me last year, And then after I read it, I went and bought my own copy because I loved it so much. And this is a book that I will reread many times because it's, first of all, it's nonfiction. So essentially it's a book on the history of childbirth. And there's plenty of books out there about how to give birth, what to do before you have a baby, blah blah blah. But to my knowledge, there's not that many books on the history of childbirth and like how different cultures experienced it and what they did for pain and how they delivered babies and all of that. And this is what it's about. It's kind of like it's kind of short, so I would call it more of an overview. But after I read this book, I definitely looked more into it because it's so interesting. Like I'm not even really interested in having babies, but I feel like this is a book you should definitely read before you have a baby. Men and women. My favorite part about it was that most women were the main child deliverers, like they were the midwives up until I think it was the 15 or 1600s in Europe specifically, until like the men were like, wait a minute, we need to have a part in this. So they just kind of like sent men in. They made this law where men had to be the doctors and they like weren't even trained in childbirth, and I was like, alright. And anyways, it's like a really good read, and I think that you guys should read it. The next one that I got, this was a gift from a friend, The Secret History, and it's by Donna Tartt. And this is a book that I feel like is recommended by everyone to everyone, and I didn't know why before he got this for me. I was like, first of all, I never even looked into it. I never read about it. But oh my gosh, I love it so much. It's about this kid. He goes to school across country somewhere in New England, and he's really poor, and he like falls into this seemingly not rough crowd. He falls into this group of like really nerdy Greek major students, and he like pretends to be rich, and he knows about Greek history, but not as much as they do. But it's a murder mystery, essentially, this book is. And it gets really, really good, and it was so addicting. I would say after chapter like 4, I couldn't put this book down, and I just read it all the way through. So I would definitely give it a read. It is a little rough. It's a rough start. But don't give up on it, because it does get really good, I promise. And then the last one, this isn't one that I've read necessarily, but it's great for inspiration. I guess it doesn't really have words in it. It's just like an art book. I guess it does have some, but not many. It's mostly art. But this is a book that I found in Canada. I got it at the thrift store for $1. $1. That was crazy. And so I was like, even if it's not good, I'm gonna get it. And I got it, and I love when people have, I forget what they're called. They're like traveling sketchbooks, and the art that they do, it's like really sketchy. It's a very specific name, but I can't remember it. But so this is one of my favorite art styles, and it's a whole book of it. I think it's the same guy, and it's all around Paris. This is his Paris sketchbook. I don't have many books like this because in the bookstore they're very expensive, and it's not that I'm not willing to help out artists and writers by buying their books, but sometimes I feel really bad about spending so much on just one book when it's just for inspiration, because they're usually upwards of like $50. This one's only $25, so this is probably one I would have bought even if it wasn't on sale. But I've never seen this at the bookstore. It might be an older book. But I have many of these on my wish list because they're so inspiring, and I love looking at other people's art, even if it's not a type of art style that I participate in. It just really gets my creative juices flowing. So anyways, this definitely recommend if you are looking for some art inspiration. The rest of my books that I have, I'm sure there will be a part 2 to this video, but those are the ones that I've read. I didn't really want to do favorite books that I haven't read because that doesn't make sense. So when I've read more books that I own, I'll be doing a part 2, hopefully in the next couple months. Anyways, if you want to follow me on social media, I made a separate Snapchat and Twitter for my art and like personal posts, because my other ones are for my other business that aren't really everybody friendly. They're not safe for work, let's say that. So you can follow those if you want. I'm gonna link them down in the description, and then you can follow my Instagram and my Patreon, which is where you can get my art, and my Etsy. I have a lot of links. Anyways, thanks for watching.